Back in the 2000s, cheap plug-and-play consoles were rampant. If your company had a backlog of games and some cheap or even easy to emulate hardware, you were onto a winner. Parents would snag these things for their kids and they might get a couple of hours of fun out of them until they came to the realisation that 99% of games before 1998 were pish. Given they've recently dropped out of the console market and had a huge catalogue of software, Sega began to license out their IPs for use as part of a bunch of different plug-and-plays. In fact, they still do, but At Games Hellspawn Sonic isn't our focus today. Instead, I'll be looking briefly at this, the Radica Sega Genesis Play TV Legends Volume 2. Quite a mouthful of a title. Well, actually no, I won't be looking at it, I lost mine years ago. What I'll really be looking at is the 5th game down on this list, Gain Ground. Now, like I said, I had one of these when I was younger, so I got my first experience as Sonic the Hedgehog. But other than Sonic 2, the only game I ever played on this was Gain Ground. I'm not sure if it was the alliteration in the name or the fact that Ooze was too hard, Echo was for pussies. I'd take that back. Columns was too much for my brain, and Alex Kidd sucked. Gain Ground just stood out. It was simple to play, had badass looking characters, and one of the best songs in gaming history. Honestly, I can't think of many games that open to such a hard tune as this. I'd recommend you go listen to it, especially because in a sea of repetitive chip tunes, this one sits at the top. It doesn't just loop after 15 or 20 seconds. It's one long piece of unique music. And the rest of the game's soundtrack isn't too shabby either. You'll just be lucky if you ever get to hear it. See, unfortunately, Gain Ground's an arcade port, and with arcade games being difficult to the point of insanity, Gain Ground is, well, it's difficult to the point of insanity. I don't claim to be a master of video games or anything, but I beat Snake's Revenge legitimately, okay, so I understand the true frustration of video games. I can deal with it. No part of me can deal with the difficulty exponential of Gain Ground. It really is an arcade port. The very start is piss easy, then all of a sudden, the game looks like this. There's projectiles everywhere, the time's running out, and maybe we should just examine the game bit by bit. Take it slow, just from the title screen. Well, it splits apart and we get to gameplay. As I'm sure you're aware from the background video, the game is an overhead shooter. You play as a bizarre selection of bootleg action movie protagonists, fighting your way through different eras. According to the 5 minutes I spent on Wikipedia, the story is roughly that in the future world peace has been achieved, but the government decides that's no good, so they stick people in a fighting simulation to turn them into warriors and revive their fighting spirit. What? Is fucking Big Boss president? Anyway, something goes wrong with the simulation, and now Earth's bravest fighters need to battle their way out. The gameplay is fairly unique, every character having their own unique abilities. You get to choose what character you want before you start a screen, so it allows you to tactically plan out who might be more effective. Each screen can be beaten in one of two ways, either making it to the exit zone, or wiping out every enemy. Typically you're going to be trying to run through rather than killing everyone. Mostly from the fact that you can add to your ranks by finding characters on the screen and taking them to the exit zone. On top of this, some of the characters might not have the ability to kill some of the enemies, in the cases where their weapons can't reach high places. You can also end up getting more guys killed hanging around than just running through. I presume the drawback to running through is that you don't get very high scores and thus don't get as many continues. And those continues will probably be necessary, because as broken as some of these characters are, some of them confuse me. Like, how is it possible that this guy can only shoot north? Does he hold a compass in his hand to make sure? Yeah, I can't figure out why. But some designer made it so that some attacks are limited directionally. It's nuts. Some characters end up firing practically in one direction, whereas others have 8. It's sometimes made up for by their secondary attacks, but that's just plain silly. Okay, you figure out who you can hit what with, pick up a couple of characters, and you seem to be making progress. Oh shit, come on, what? Congrats, you made it to where it becomes unplayable. This was as far as I ever made it, and I've played a lot of this game. This song I mentioned earlier, both my older brother and I have it burned into our heads. We can hum the full thing, but not any of the other songs, because we never reached them. Hell, I doubt I could get that far now. Well, this was unexpected. Turns out the game's a little easier than I thought. Only a little though. I honestly shocked myself that I got this far, given I hadn't played it for about 10 years. I do think I was assisted somewhat by using an analog stick, but I kind of feel like a god. Having actual recent experience has given me a fresh perspective on a couple of things, and I think I can give some slightly more in-depth commentary. Starting out, I was slightly off on weapon talk. It seems all characters do have one omnidirectional attack, but their special attack is often limited to a couple of directions. So almost all characters have the ability to take out almost all enemies. I know that sounds vague, so let's switch into analysis mode. Enemies in this game can exist on one of three planes: hole, ground, or at height. Ground enemies are most common and make up around 80% of the foes you'll encounter. These enemies can be attacked by anyone. Height enemies are about 10 to 15% of the game, and they can only be killed with high attacks. Hole enemies make up the remaining 5 or so percent. These guys, I'm not sure what's up with them, because they don't seem to attack that much, and you also can't seem to hit them until they crawl out of their hole. The system mostly works. Given everyone can take out about 80% of enemies or so, you'd think it'd be fine, and near the beginning it is, because the 15% that can't be killed by low attacks, the height enemies, are mostly set dressing, often only hanging around at the exit gates, and even then they're easily dodgeable. As the difficulty ramps up though, you end up with more height enemies and it kind of gets to the point where you can't pass through without killing them. That's fine if every character can kill them, but if every character you have only has low attacks, you have to get them all killed so you can use a continue and get Spear Grandad back. Genuinely, it might take a little reworking, but if they'd just given every character a high and low attack, it would have benefited the game significantly. Speaking of things they could have done, increasing the movement speed or firing range of some of the characters. I mean, what's the point in Rambo Lady? Her firing range is tiny, and even though she has a high attack, it's got an awful range too, and it can only shoot forward. Characters like her end up just being used as fodder for the player, rather than having a proper use. I'll praise the game for this though. It gets intense in the holy shit, I can't mess up now, I've never made it this far, I need to keep going kind of way. You get that same feeling you get reaching the final boss of an NES game, or when insert sports team here is holding on to a lead. The game really sucks you in. It feels like some sort of gauntlet, like a true challenge, and I think part of it is just how fluid everything is. There's so many different moving sprites at once, all fairly detailed, and half of them are shooting huge quantities of smaller sprites to flood the screen even more. On occasion, the game kind of turns into a proto-bullet hell, where you have to weave around a vast number of projectiles. It's slower than perhaps any modern bullet hell style game, but it's not a walk in the park. On the subject of speed, one of the things that actually impresses me about Gain Ground is just how many things the game handles being on screen at once, without any noticeable slowdown. Maybe on original hardware it's different, but on every version of the game I've ever played, it's been very well optimised. And looking at the prices, I'm not quite sure I have a chance of playing it on original hardware anytime soon. I think the only thing I haven't had a chance to evaluate with this game is the multiplayer. Since I don't own the game physically, nor do I own a second Genesis controller, experiencing two-player would be a little awkward. I could probably hook my PC up to my TV and play some at some point. Who knows, maybe that could be another video. As for now, I think I'll leave it here. When I started writing this, I wasn't sure where I was going. I think I kind of got lost in the sauce. But I have a habit of never editing scripts, so this is the best you're getting. Thanks for making it this far. Now I'll hit all the buttons, and I'll leave you with some Gain Ground highlights.